April 19, 1775. The Revolutionary War begins after the shot heard round the world at the Old North Bridge. Facing more firepower from the provincial militia than anticipated, British soldiers, redcoats, leave Concord and begin their slow retreat back to the relative safety of Boston via Cambridge. The fatigued main column of redcoats would pass near the Jason Russell House in what was then known as the village of Menominee, modern-day Arlington. Russell himself, a fairly prosperous 58-year-old farmer, was returning home after secreting his family to safety at a nearby farm.
We have the story of his neighbor coming over and telling him that you should take refuge with the women and children who were going up the hill to today's Belmont. What was happening was that news that was spread by Paul Revere and William Dawes was starting to spread to the more outlying areas, places like Danvers and Salem and along the South Shore. And so all of these people were showing up to fight wherever the fight was happening. And it was getting more and more intense the further toward Cambridge they were going.
It was about 5 p.m. on the 19th of April when the British were passing by these very grounds. Now, waiting for the redcoats on this property, behind thick brush, hastily constructed breastworks, stone walls, and trees, were members of the American militia and the Minutemen, who had poured in earlier that day from surrounding communities like Danvers, Beverly, and Salem. The men focused their attention on the approaching main column of British troops marching along the old Concord Road, now Massachusetts Avenue. When the redcoats were close enough, the rebels then opened fire. Suddenly, the exhausted British soldiers became enraged. Musket fire and heavy smoke swiftly enveloped these grounds, erupting into boundless carnage. 7 men from Danvers were killed in the front yard. 2 were seriously wounded. 1 was taken prisoner. In a frenzied search for cover, some militiamen managed to scurry inside the Jason Russell House.
They just showed up here and they sought refuge in the house. They did some fighting. They were probably shooting from outside windows and trying to hide as they could.
In the midst of outright chaos, Jason Russell himself tried seeking refuge in his home, but he would never make it. He had a lame leg, moved too slow, and was shot twice as he reached the front door. He was then bayoneted 11 times by resolute British infantrymen, following the rebel soldiers who managed to make it inside the house. For the ensuing minutes, this home became a slaughterhouse. The intense barrage of musket fire, billowing smoke and screams overwhelmed this home. Outside, British infantrymen continually peppered the Russell House with musket fire. The musket balls penetrating walls, windows, and ceilings. In this kitchen, a redcoat tried opening the cellar door and was immediately shot to death by one of the Danvers Minutemen hiding in the floor below. British regulars would then storm the parlor on the first floor, the bloody staircase, the 2 chambers on the second floor, and finally, the attic.
And there's some record of the most intense fighting happening in the upper rooms, which is an interesting fact.
Although the Minutemen put up a furious fight, there was no exit. They were quickly overcome with point-blank British firepower and summarily bayoneted. When the brutal firefight finally subsided and the smoke cleared, the British then ransacked the Russell House and quickly left for Boston. Historians say a total of 12 Americans and 2 redcoats were killed inside the home.
It was such chaos that we know how many people died in the house, but however many flooded in, we have no concept. And we've seen different kinds of, a lot of what we go by is oral history, just because nobody thought to write at the time. But we have somebody who went and interviewed a lot of the children and grandchildren of the participants, and that's one of the best sources that we have for what happened that day.
Jason's wife, Elizabeth, returned to the house to find her husband dead. Jason Russell and other fallen Americans, their bodies riddled with musket balls, torn apart by British bayonets, were laid out like cordwood on the kitchen floor, blood from their fatal wounds forming a grotesque pool in the room. Elizabeth was reported to have said the blood in the room was almost ankle deep. Today, a 19-foot white marble obelisk serves as the final resting place for Jason Russell and others who gave their lives to breathe new life into what would become a new nation. Nearly 250 years later, new and exciting clues continue to emerge throughout the home, attesting to the brutality of that awful day. Just 2 years ago, a team of archaeologists and historians conducted a ballistics study in the Jason Russell house. Within minutes, they were finding several musket ball holes that have been overlooked for well over 2 centuries. Within 10 minutes of their arrival, they discovered a musket hole on the dark side of the door jamb leading to the Russell cellar. More holes were found in the first floor parlor, the staircase, and the attic. The trajectory of many strikes points to the exterior Mass Ave wall just below the first floor parlor window, likely fired by British regulars outside, targeting provincials pouring gunfire from the inside.
And then we're finding the new information that comes from this study that is taking part. I think very few, I don't know if they found additional bullet holes at any of the other sites, but this one, we're already well known for the bullet holes, and then to have found additional ones is pretty remarkable.
As word of the Jason Russell House continues to gain in popularity and status among history buffs, centuries later, it is still revealing its guarded secrets and attesting to the tenacity of those people who lived and ultimately died here. For ACMi News, I'm Jeff Barnes.